But Jake, even before the trade deadline stuff, all the big news that has come out over the past, maybe since, the end of last week about Joel Embiid. We saw the fall against Golden State. Turns out left meniscus injury. He's going to undergo a procedure. Sounds a lot like surgery on his left meniscus. Before, Jake, we were talking about Joel Embiid. Should he be still eligible to win MVP because he's having a great season? He is destroying teams when he's playing. And then the Jokic thing happened, and then this happened, both of those games on national TV. So an inordinate amount of attention placed on him. But practically, A, what does this do for Joel Embiid long-term? Because this is yet another knee surgery for him. And B, how does this alter Philadelphia's approach at the trade deadline?
Well, I think let's talk about the trade deadline first, being that I think it'll answer the long term, because the Sixers so far, the messaging out of Philadelphia has been that they're going to wait for the immediate aftermath, see how the surgery went. The whole talk of we're not exactly sure what the injury looks like until we get under the knife and get in there and look up close and personal with the ligaments and the tissues and all that stuff to kind of make like a true evaluation of what the recovery is going to be. So that could just be spin and he could be out for the year and they're just delaying the inevitable, but I'm taking them at their word for now. I just think that generally indicates that the Sixers, and as people there were telling me from the get-go of this injury, the Sixers definitely are still hoping and operating with the guiding light that they're going to be contending for a title behind Joel Embiid this year, that they're addressing this injury now. And, this is typically something that I think Philly in the past has given Joel 2-3 weeks to rehab and evaluate before going under the knife. Like, they're going to it immediately. They're not wasting any time like the Lakers did with Gabe Vincent back in the fall. They wasted like 3-4 weeks of trying to, in hindsight, hindsight being 2020, they wasted like 3-4 weeks to figure out what Gabe Vincent's knee would look like before he ended up undergoing arthroscopic surgery on his meniscus late in December that ended up being an 8 to 10 week recovery period. So they're clearly like trying to do this with the goal of keeping him in line for a playoff run. So all that being said, I'm not so certain that Philly's going to be like going out and adding like big game pieces to that contending roster that they have right now. Just that it's going to be hard to see and evaluate those guys without Embiid being there. If they end up doing something like Marcus Morris is expiring salary or Robert Covington's expiring salary, or combining those expiring salaries for somebody who's like more of like a fifth man to that lineup, I wouldn't be surprised. But I do think this injury kind of throws into question like the idea of them going out and going big game hunting and making a move for one of the top players on the board.
Well, it's a weird thing that Philly's in because let's just look at the facts of right now they're fifth in the East. And if you fancy yourself as a title contender, you have to stay out of the play-in, and B, you probably want to stay away from Boston. Right now, they would be on the line if they make it to the second round because they would be matched up with the Knicks right now. That would be the 4-5. That would be the Jake Fischer, Dan Devine first round matchup because those guys they live in New York. But that would be the
Philly
matchup.
In New York would really be my matchup because I'm
I'm
from Philly, live here. That'd be quite a time.
Yes, that would be the Amtrak series.
Yes.
That would definitely be the Amtrak train series, hopping on that train and not on a plane, which is actually not a bad experience. But
no, definitely not.
If you're Philly, you want to stay out of the play-in. I think the only team that they would be worried about, if you're worried about Joel Embiid's long-term health and if you can hold your water until then, would probably be the Miami Heat, who sit at 8. But that's a 5-game difference. The Heat have been in a tailspin, lost to the Clippers last night. They look reasonably better with Terry Rozier, but they don't look complete. They don't look whole, and maybe this just isn't their year, so you don't have any more than a natural fear of them. I thought that they were in a tricky spot because of Tobias Harris's contract, and he may walk, and Philly, because of a second apron tax world that we are operating in now, you have to be very careful about just trading your expiring salary for someone else's longer term salary and believing that, you can just keep this train rolling. Like, teams have to be a lot more fiscally responsible in it. So that's why Jake brought up Marcus Morris. But is that a viable strategy, though, do you think? Do you think they should punt on this season, get Joel Embiid healthy for the long term, for the remainder of his prime, or should they be trying to go for it this year?
I don't know what they necessarily should do until, it does sound like BS spin, but until we really know what his recovery period is going to be, I do understand that, because to your point, they have been saying all along, and it's an objective fact, the Sixers are going to be one of the few teams that have legitimate contending aspirations when Embiid was healthy this year, that's going to actually have major cap space this summer. And I believe I've been told that all of the major parties involved, from Embiid to Daryl Morey to ownership to Nick Nurse, that building seems to be in lockstep with that idea of we got a good thing going this year, but if nothing's really out there, let's save our powder and let's do something really, really big this summer. Now, how big can that be when Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are all but expected to be back in LA with James Harden, and Pascal Siakam's off the board now, sure to be re-signed in Indiana, OG Anunoby to New York. The free agent class isn't exactly shaping up to be full of game changers either, but that cap space can be used in multiple ways. They could do some sign-in trades or just trade for someone who's on a roster elsewhere right now. All these players that are being considered off the table, unavailable right now, a lot can change when you don't make the play-in or you fall short in the first round and what have you. So I kind of do see the benefit and the just practicality of holding your chips now and making a move this summer. However, something that I'm writing today at Yahoo Sports is that I think across the league, across the league, everyone's going to have more draft picks and more stuff to play with this summer. So it will be a more crowded market in terms of buyers that actually have stuff to shop with. Right now, Milwaukee and Denver and a bunch of these teams that are trying to get better, that are true contenders, that are one move away, have a little they don't have a first round pick to trade. And the second the draft comes around, you get 2, sometimes 3 additional picks to play with. So maybe the advantage that Philly has isn't so big, but the cap room is going to be definitely a tool in their toolkit that other teams in that stratosphere don't necessarily have.
Yeah, they're in, like you said, they're in a completely an interesting spot, and it takes a really sober view. You have to be optimistic and you have to be sober at the same time about where you sit right now and the possibilities and the likelihood of what you are trying to get this summer, and how attractive you're going to look when everybody else is going to have a similar sort of advantage.